Well, good evening, Warriors, and welcome to another edition of the R&R Sports Report. I am your host, Robert Hagan. I don't know where my sidekick is. Oh, that's right. He's still on his way back from, that's right, Green Bay. Hopefully he comes in here shortly and we get a little conversation with Randy talking about his trip to Green Bay. Lots of other things going on in the Northwest. So lots of sports action happening. We've got MLB action. We've got the preseason polls for LC basketball are out. Also, we've got our Week 6 NFL recap. Among many things, the playoff race is getting even hotter for the NASCAR series. And then, besides all of that, we've got high school football. We'll talk a little bit about that. Also, where we rank in our pick'ems, we'll talk some extension with that. So hopefully, if you are listening, let us know. Drop us a comment in the comment box. If you want to join me and chime on, let me know. We'll send you a link and let you join in and chat with us a little bit. As flying solo right now is, again, we talked. Randy is had a great vacation. He went back on Friday and made the trip to Green Bay, Wisconsin to catch the New York Jets beating the Green Bay Packers. We'll talk about where each of these teams are, whether we should be worried with their rankings, and so on and so forth. Let's take a look at earlier action today and get you caught up on the scoreboard. First off, in the American League Division Series, finally finished today after a rain out yesterday in New York. And the Cleveland Guardians fall to the New York Yankees this afternoon by a score of 5-1. Really, I never was a game to begin with, as the Yankees jump out to a 3-run lead right off the bat in the first inning on a Stanton home run to right field, scoring 3. So Aaron Judge hits another home run in this one. So the only offense for the Guardians here was by Jose Ramirez. So unfortunately, you look at the Cleveland Guardians out of it. We're shocked that they had made it as far as they did this year. So highly impressed with how Terry Francona ran this team. I don't think this team is far from being out over the next couple of years. So look for them to come back, get a good jump on the teams this next year. And we will chat a little bit about that a little bit later in the MLB part of the hour. Also underway in San Diego right now. We are at the end of the third inning, and it is 0-0 as it looks like JT Realmuto, Bryce Harper, and Nick Castellanos is up to bat here in the top of the fourth inning. Again, no score in game number 1 of the NLCS. So if you're watching, again, we'll chime in a few more times. Randy not here with me to start things off. If you want to join in on the action, drop me a line. We'll get you on here with me, and we'll talk a little sports. So let's jump in now. We'll talk a little bit and do our recap for the NFL in Week 6, which was another crazy weekend with things going on. Let's start off first with the Thursday night game of the week. And my opinion, before we get into the teams, is a little bit, I'm finding Amazon is not doing this cred. How much longer are we going to have to keep dealing with Amazon Prime running it? Lots of from what I'm seeing, hearings and reading of folks complaining not being able to watch the games. For me, it's one of those things of, all right, a lot of people don't have Amazon Prime. Some do. I mean, you either got to go and watch a game or buy the subscription. A lot of us already put enough money out into Dish Network and that stuff. So for me, it's time to bring that back. NFL, you tried something. I go back to the multicast. If you want to run it on Amazon Prime, that's it. Fine, run it on Amazon Prime, but also get there, add it back to the cable, add it back to Dish, add it back there to part of it, or that's the bad part. You got to go someplace that does NFL ticket, that does, or somebody that will stream them for you. So hearing lots of pluses and minuses. Haven't heard many good about the play calls and the announcers on it. Pre-game, post-game, pretty good, but not the other. So we look at that first game, another real barn burner. You feel for these teams. Washington comes out and wins this one against Chicago by a score of 12-7. Brian Robertson, who was that feel-good story from 2 weeks ago, I brought him up. We talked about it. He was that guy that was hurt, was shot, and got to make the start here last week. So it was good to see him in that one. Carson Wentz ends up going out, ends up breaking his thumb. He is going to end up having surgery, looking to probably be out for weeks. We'll talk with reading stuff with him. It looks like is a broken finger, probably 4 weeks. That's what they're saying. Taylor Heinicke going to get the start. He's going to get the start at home against Green Bay, against a team like Green Bay who just lost to the New York Jets. You looking at what this team is capable of doing. Brian Robinson being that feel-good story. Green Bay on the slide now without Randall Cobb. A lot is going to look different for this Green Bay team. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that game looks like this next week. We'll talk about those game week 7 picks, but that is going to be a morning game this next week. So it might be one to look out for. Look for Washington maybe to pull another upset. We will see with that one. Also, Justin Fields, you could tell the frustration with him, play calling, and so forth. Another under 200-yard passing game with 1 touchdown, 1 interception, sacked 5 times. They've got to get him some protection. They're just struggling with that quite a lot. And especially, Justin Fields, him being the leading runner. Is he in the same class as Lamar Jackson being that running quarterback? Yes, a bit, but I don't think his dynamics is quite as much as Lamar's is. Other guys, David Montgomery, hardly bad numbers, 15 rushes, 67 yards. So just did not look like a very complete game from highlights and such. So going to be interesting in that one. How about one of the big shockers in last week's early session, San Francisco falling? Yes, San Francisco falling to the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons who now are 4-3, or excuse me, 3-3, leading in their division. Brandon Ayuk with the San Francisco 49ers is probably the biggest shining light on this game next to Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy is making things now 100% and taking advantage of it with this contract that he's got right now. San Francisco wanted to move on from him, didn't get him the quite wanted out. Now with Trey Lance getting hurt, he's trying to prove himself. Is this enough to get him a starting job elsewhere after this season? Does San Francisco move on from him? It'll be interesting to see. How impressed are you with Marcus Mariota? Marcus Mariota, what has he done in this game? 129 yards, 2 touchdown passes. Granted, the 2 touchdown passes, one to Kyle Pitts, the other one to Pruitt. I don't know. What do you do with this? It's very, very odd, but they do come through, come up big. Atlanta knocks off San Francisco 28-14. They've got a big week coming up next week. Atlanta is taking on Cincinnati in Cincinnati. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. How about New England? New England goes into Cleveland. Bailey Zappi, 309 yards passing for being the backup to the backup. 24-34, 309 yards, 2 touchdowns. And he comes away with a big victory in Cleveland. Cleveland fans, should you be worried this week? Is there a possibility you get Deshaun Watson back? Could it be that game that you guys need? They take on my Baltimore Ravens. It's going to be rough. It's going to be tough. Baltimore stumbling. We'll talk about how bad they've stumbled. Losing now 3 games after having double-digit leads. It's crazy. Bailey Zappi. Remember that name. He might become one of those players over the next couple of weeks. He will probably get the start this next week. Easily probably get the start this next week. Nick Chubb, 58-yard rushing. Jacoby Brissett. Was he the right deal to bring in? I don't know. He hasn't got this team many wins. You've went 2-4 without Deshaun Watson with you. Has it been enough to keep them there? Do you let Brissett play one more and let Watson get a little bit more practice in? It'll be interesting to see where that goes, how that goes. You've got Ramondre Stevenson for New England. Gets the ball 19 times, 76 yards, 2 touchdowns. Played huge. He had a couple of breaks and long runs, knocking out a 31-yard run at one point against that defense that we all thought that was really, really good for Cleveland. They struggled. They struggled immensely. So, how does things happen for this ball club going into where they will travel into Baltimore next week? It'll be interesting to see what Cleveland does. New England, on the other hand, New England is going to host probably maybe the second worst Monday Night Football game of the year with Chicago and New England. Are you going to want to turn on the TV and watch that game on Monday? It'll be interesting to see. How about Indianapolis against Jacksonville? This game, back and forth, watching this one as we had this game up on one of the smaller screens at the place we watch football at, and you looked at that. Jacksonville jumps out to a 14-13 lead. They jumped out 7-0 in the first quarter. Come back 21-20 and going into the 7th, and then it was like the fourth quarter happened, and there's the old Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan able to get there. So it is a interesting things happening in Indianapolis. Matt Ryan not playing up to the potential that he should have had. So it'll be interesting to see where that. With that, Matt Ryan this week, 389 yards, 42 of 58, almost threw the ball 60 times in this ball game. 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns. And then you get to Deion Jackson. Deion Jackson comes in, plays. No Jonathan Taylor. No Harris. So now you've got to put a guy that has hardly gotten the ball much. He's a 2-year player, second-year player out of Duke. And he touches the ball this game 12 times for 42 yards. Cannot be the same thing next week. We can't keep relying on Matt Ryan, especially going into Tennessee this week. You'll have Tennessee. So it'll be interesting. It'll be very interesting to see what the thought process is taking on a team like Tennessee, like Derrick Henry. It has not been the same Derrick Henry over the last few years. So it will be interesting to see what happens over the next week as they get ready to take on Tennessee. How about Minnesota and Miami? Miami did not play well at all as far as a rushing game standpoint in this one, at least by my watching of this game. Mozart, 50 yards. Bridgewater, 10 yards. The best part of this game has to be the receiving core for Minnesota. It was nice to see Jefferson, 100 yards. Adam Thielen still got 4 targeted, still comes away with a touchdown, 36 yards. Yeah, he had a few more yards. But Kirk Cousins, 20 of 30, 175, 2 touchdowns, no interception. They're playing smart football. They are playing extremely smart football. People laughed at me. I took Minnesota in the first part of our selection for the winner out of the NFC North. And I said, watch out. Here comes Minnesota. Has Minnesota finally figured it out? Is that the team that is going to make a huge push, a huge difference in this ball game or this season, excuse me? They proved it. They slowed down Miami's rushing game enough to play. You look at Teddy Bridgewater, comes in. Teddy Bridgewater goes 23 of 34, 329 yards after Thompson leaves. He practiced, okay? Bridgewater, 329. It is such a funny carousel with Miami quarterbacks right now. We'll talk about that as we look at these next week's games for week 7. But the shining light for Miami had to have been Teddy Bridgewater. We move on to Cincinnati. Cincinnati defeats New Orleans 30-26. Joe Burrow. Is this the Joe Burrow that we've been missing and we wanted to see a little bit more of? I think so. Joe Burrow has a great game, 38 of 37. 28 of 37. Excuse me, 28 of 37. 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. He also had a rushing touchdown. Joe Burrow, this is the guy. We've said this. I've said it about the AFC North. This guy is going to be that group that's in the AFC that's going to make things happen. It's going to be Lamar and it's going to be Joe Burrow for the next few years. It's the same thing. We add in the names. Patrick Mahomes. You got that name there. You've got Josh Allen's name in there. The AFC quarterbacks look phenomenal. They're doing good. But Joe Burrow finally looked like the old Joe Burrow from LSU. Maybe he should wear that LSU jersey a little bit more. Maybe he should be bringing that LSU jersey that was the championship jersey. It'll be interesting. It'd be very interesting to see what happens with that one. As a quick score update, we look at the Philadelphia Phillies and Pirates. The Philadelphia Phillies score now 1-0 on a Bryce Harper home run in the fourth inning off of Hugh Darvish. So right now in game number 1 of the NLCS, the Phillies lead the Padres 1-0. So we'll keep you posted on that game. Let's talk about the sad news. We'll talk a little bit about the Giants in Baltimore. Listen, it's hard to be a Baltimore fan right now. It is so hard to be a Baltimore fan right now. You have 3 games. You have double-digit leads and blow both double-digit leads. You lose this one by 4. You see the same thing happening from last year. Out of last year, 8 games last year, we lost within 3 points of each other. That's not how Baltimore designed it. Now, you look at what New York did. New York had it a little bit easier. Who's New York Giants defensive coordinator right now? Yep, that's right. Wink Martindale. The same guy that he had to coach against on the scout teams for Lamar Jackson. He knew what that team was going to do. He knew that. And he built the scheme around it. He was able to get the Giants where they needed to be to make the plays. Listen, I love John Harbaugh. I love what he's done with this team. But you have to put your foot down and stop playing zone defense and prevent defense in the fourth quarter when you're so far up and so far ahead in a game. It makes absolutely no sense. You give up 14 points in the fourth quarter. 14 points. You're well ahead in this ball game. Well ahead. I just talked about it with some of my kids a few minutes ago as we were getting ready to lock up for the day. And we were talking about the idea of what Baltimore's defense looks like. I'm sorry, Baltimore's defense is looking terrible to the point of, I'm sorry, Marlon Humphreys, Marcus Peters. You got paid money to be a defensive back. Play the game. That's all you got to do. Play the game. Marcus Peters, Marlon Humphreys, you got to put in a little effort. They play so far off coverage. And again, in fourth quarter, it's the same thing they did even with Wink Martindale, who is coaching the New York Giants now. And they are playing so soft coverage in fourth quarter that Baltimore just loses the lead every time. Now, should I say that Baltimore is 6-0 or should be 6-0 as a fan? Maybe. Maybe. But as a realist, looking at this team, there is no reason why we should be blowing double-digit leads both times. 3 games this year, blown double-digit leads. Daniel Jones, he looked mobile, sitting with Jimmy. We sat there and watched the game the other day. My buddy Jimmy Maydall. We watched this game and watched what they were doing. Daniel Jones was moving around the pocket quite well. He was able to get around. Yes, he got sacked 4 times. JPP put some pressure on him. But when Daniel Jones is able to control what's happening, it's a whole different ballgame. Baltimore went away from Kenyon Drake, who Kenyon Drake was making plays and running the ball quite well. And in the fourth quarter, all of a sudden, we don't want to hand out the ball. So it's very interesting to see how this game turned out. And like I said, we were talking it in the locker room a little bit ago before I left the school. We talked about the idea of what Baltimore's defense needs to do. We got to quit playing cover, prevent defense. We got to quit playing soft coverage in the fourth quarter. To give up 14 points in the fourth quarter, to let a decent team who's played well this year get back into it. The Giants 5-1, 5-1, leading the NFC East. It'll be interesting. Be very interesting. And Parker's joining in. Hey, Parker, didn't I just see you just a few minutes ago? All right, let's talk a little bit about the game Randy was at. I want to we'll just talk a few minutes about that game, and then we'll bounce over, and hopefully when he gets here, if he gets here, we'll talk a little bit about that game. Listen, the New York Jets did what they needed to do. They walked into Lambeau, and they dominated. Their defense looked unbelievable. Their defense looked great. 4 sacks on Aaron Rodgers. 4 sacks with a total loss of 36 yards just in sacks. Quinnen Williams. Is Quinnen Williams right now the leader for Defensive Player of the Year? Could be. He looked unbelievable. The pressure that front was getting on Aaron Rodgers was disrupting his timing. Looked great. Looked unbelievable. Yeah, you lose another target again. Randall Cobb. We'll talk about Randall here in a few minutes when we get to injuries. Randall Cobb now down. Allen Lazard even took a shot. He is out for a little bit. So, with that being said, who is Aaron's throwing to? We talk about the running back by committee thing. For a while it looked, it looked okay. Running back by committee. We'll rotate guys in. We'll get there, do that kind of stuff. But when you hand off the ball to A.J. Dillon 10 times, 41 yards, you hand off the ball to Aaron Jones 9 times for 19 yards. How can these guys get any kind of rhythm? Especially 2 guys who are a dominant 2 guys. Listen, I like Aaron Jones. I like A.J. Dillon. What those guys can do with the ball, phenomenal. But you can't hand the ball off 10 times to A.J. Dillon and hope for him to get into a routine. You can't hand the ball off to Aaron Jones 9 times and hope to get him in a rhythm. The same thing would happen with the Baltimore game. J.K. Dobbins. They used J.K. Dobbins the very first 5 plays. And then all of a sudden they just filter him out. And guess who got all the touches then? Kenyon Drake. Kenyon Drake looked great. But Kenyon Drake also got 17 touches. 17 touches. If you're a running back in the NFL, you have to touch the ball 20 times. 20 to 25 times. If you don't touch the ball 20 to 25 times, there is no rhythm. There is no offense. That's the one thing that frustrates me with running back by committee. That's why we say, don't draft anybody. If you play fantasy football, don't draft anybody that goes to New England. Who do you know who's going to run the ball? Could be Harris one day. Could be somebody else one day. You have to set up some type of rhythm to be successful in an NFL offense anytime. You can't keep changing back and forth. Just can't do it. You can't do it. On the other hand, we get over to that team that played quite well. New York Jets played unbelievable. And I said it. I talked about it. Randy and I have talked about it. Watch Breece Hall. Guess what? He had 20 carries. And what did Breece Hall do? 116 yards, touchdown, and he made some unbelievable cutback moves, especially on his touchdown run. The cut he made putting his left foot in the ground, going back to the right side, and getting into the end zone. He looked like he'd been playing ball in the NFL for 10 years. This guy is going to be successful because New York keeps handing him the ball. Zach Wilson handing the ball to Breece Hall. Watch this combination. You know, I like Robert Saleh. I like what they're doing up there. Randy and I have talked about this many times. I like what is going to be happening with this team over the next couple of years. They might be better than we think and getting farther down. We get quicker. Again, we're going to pause here. You are listening to the R&R Sports Report live here on the R&R Facebook page, also on the YouTube channel. Drop us a line. Let us know you're listening. And if you want to chime in on anything, drop us a note in the comment area. Again, Randy's on his way back from Green Bay. He may or may not join us tonight. We will see. Lots of folks doing different things tonight. So I'm flying solo. So it has been a great start to the show. A little long-winded about some of the games, but, you know, I like it. And look at that. I'm glad. Thank you, Colton. I'm glad you're watching. Colton Lockhart, another one of my players. So let's talk a little bit more. We'll finish out the afternoon games on Sunday there. How about Pittsburgh versus Tampa Bay? This game was a lot closer than what you thought in this one, but who would have figured? Who would have figured Tom Brady and Leonard Fournette would only put up 300 total yards against a Pittsburgh team that has been struggling all year? Was Pittsburgh's defense that much more dominant? Tom Brady only sacked twice. He was pressured. Tom still put up 243 yards, a touchdown. Leonard Fournette, 21 carries. This is where it's going to prove me wrong with exactly what I just said about running backs. Give them the ball 21 plus times, 22 plus times, 23 plus times. You're going to get a good rhythm. Now I say this is one thing that happens. 21 touches, only 63 yards. Only 63 yards. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I think for here on the thing we need to worry about is what's happening with Pittsburgh a little bit more. Kenny Pickett, highly talented young man, got to get out there and play a little bit today, and then gets knocked out. The new concussion protocol. He has to get pulled out of the game. Fine, let's put Mitchell Trubisky back into the game. Mitchell only puts up, 144, one touch. That touchdown went to Chase Claypool. Chase Claypool looked like he was a number one guy. This is the first game that he has looked like a number one guy in his career. Could it be the possibility of that team? But how does Tampa Bay not look anywhere dominant against a 2-4 team? Is Tampa Bay that team this year that's not going to be going back to the playoffs? Could it be that team that's not going back to the playoffs when you can only get 75 yards total rushing? Listen, it is in the NFL, it has become a run and gun type of offense. College has been a run and gun type of offense. But you have to go back to what gets you there. Defense and rushing the ball. Ball control. It's the same thing we tell our players at the junior high. We rushed the ball last week for the 7th grade team. We rushed the ball probably 10, 12 times the first quarter against our game last week, and we moved the ball. slow, methodical. Took up almost 8 minutes running the ball. If you're a clock management kind of team, run the ball. I struggle with that. I think Tampa Bay doesn't have that this year. Will be fun. It'll be interesting to see. Pittsburgh, like I said, knocks off the Tampa Bay Bucks 20-18. We look at also the LA Rams knock off Carolina. We know Carolina is not that good. Oh my Lord! Look who has decided to show up with his championship belt. He is the cheesehead back from Green Bay, Randy Isbell. What is up, son?
Jets are the champions of Green Bay. And as Sauce Gardner did, we wear their cheese as a trophy for our victory.
Listen,
but I don't like it. It's too small. So go ahead.
Listen, I just went back. That was the last game I got into before I got to the afternoon games. And I talked about it. Their team looks dominant with Breece Hall and running the ball.
Yes.
He made a couple of plays in that ball game where he stuck that foot in the ground, hit a pivot, planted, especially on his touchdown run, got to the corner, to the pylon, and he just looked like he had been a back that has been in the league for more than 5 or 6 years. He knew what he was doing.
He is. And all of the what am I thinking of? Where you boo. Haley's already mad at me. What am I thinking of? Where you compare him to another player. His comparisons, I think, is the right word.
Right.
Sure. I have heard so many different names for Breece Hall, whether he's Jonathan Taylor or he's Marshall Faulk or he's all these great running backs. He's all of them. He's been absolutely fantastic. Listen, like, I will take whatever quarterback. Like, you can make fun of Zach Wilson because he's not done much. He has not thrown a touchdown in the last 2 weeks because he doesn't need to. But he's not making mistakes. No interceptions in the day. Just turn around, hand it to Breece Hall. And they come up with fun ways to get it to Breece Hall, which is even better. His touchdown in the third quarter that you talked about was a gadget play that Zach Wilson actually audibled out of quickly because it was supposed to be a reverse to Michael Carter. And when he turned around, he saw the defense was ready for it. So he just did a little inside handoff to Breece Hall. And they were completely stunned and lost. And it was great. I have Green Bay Packer tears that I collected from Lambeau. It was fun. We had a lot of time. We had a lot of fun at Lambeau Field. It was a good time.
And the other part of that I was talking about for me watching that game, like I said, we had both TVs next to Baltimore game. For me, was watching what your defense was doing. And I'm going to throw this out there, and I don't know if you heard it as you were coming in.
I did not.
Is Quinnen Williams right now the defensive player of the year in the first third of the season?
I always tell Robert Taylor I don't do awards till at least halfway. Quinnen Williams is definitely in the mix. I'd have to look at other teams and other stats to kind of see, but what he did in that game, what he had 14 tackles, a couple of sacks, he blocked the field goal. The dude has been absolutely insane. And yes, there was a lady who was going absolutely nuts behind us. We're saying things that you cannot say in a PG era. So thank you for censoring yourself, Haley. No, he's been absolutely fantastic. I have heard it's going to be really interesting. Actually, I want to get your take on this.
Okay.
Because obviously I was on cloud 9 after that game and was watching all the different stuff. And we need to get some Seattle Seahawks fans in the house because I want to give them some love too. I think the rookie of the years offensively and defensively are locked to either come from Seattle or New York. It is going to, I mean, right now, Breece Hall, I think, is the runaway winner for offensive rookie of the year. If Zappy keeps the job and defies logic and pushes the Patriots to the playoffs, I guess we can give him some love. But Ken Walker for Seattle, he looks like the real deal too. That's the reason why those two went 1-2. But on defense side, Sauce Gardner was a complete shutdown corner again. He was thrown to what, 6 times yesterday on Sunday? 1 completion for 9 yards. He disrupted 3 passes and created 3 incompletions out of the 6 attempts. Nearly had a pick 6, which was so close. Yes, the tip of the ball touches the ground, but you got to give it to him. But and I'm going to blank on the kid's name, the cornerback from Seattle, who has 4 interceptions in 4 straight games. I would be remiss to not mention his name as being one of those defensive rookies of the year. I think he was a 5th rounder for the Seahawks. Tariq something. Wooden? Tariq something.
Woolen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's been great. So my question is to you is offensive, defensive rookie of the year. It's coming from those 2 teams. Yes or no?
You know, the way that I watched Sauce play the other day, I think you're right. Breece Hall right now, I just talked about it a minute ago. I think he is the guy that puts that foot in the ground, and just watching him run the ball and the way he looks like he's having so much fun running the ball. That's the biggest thing. I was just getting ready to go to the Seattle game. Kenneth Walker, you know, he had 21 touches, 97 yards, and he comes down with a touchdown. I think he could easily be in contention for playing right now. You know, he's going to keep the job with Penny being out and that. So for me, that was another one of those games that just kind of with the Seattle getting the 10-point victory over Arizona. But I think so. I think you could easily say right now that New York is probably leading in that category.
Yeah, as New York and Seattle making its way up, though. Again, Woolen has been absolutely phenomenal. So if we were doing awards right now, you might have to give it to him as far as defensive rookie of the year. But no, Seattle is an interesting team as well. I mean, we both poo-pooed them to start the year. They're not a sexy team by any means. But they kind of, right now, the way they're setting things up, are trying to play a little bit of what the Jets are doing. They don't have as good of a defense as the Jets are showing right now. I mean, yes, they hold Arizona to 9 points, but the Cardinals are a complete mess. But offensively, it's Geno Smith with a high completion percentage. Don't make mistakes and pound the ball and control the clock. And that's what's working for Seattle as well. So in a weaker NFC, it might be a little bit for me to eliminate Seattle from the postseason.
Well, you know, you said that a little bit weaker division. Geno Smith has probably his worst game so far of the year. Only throws 197 yards. He had a QBR of 40, a little bit lower than where he had been earlier in the year. But you look, that division, he's still 3-3 in that division, where Arizona is struggling 2-4. Arizona made some big moves. We'll talk about Arizona and what they did over the last couple of days. But I want to do the Sunday night game before we go. The 2 special games. We go to what I think was still probably the biggest game of the weekend. But let's talk about Philadelphia upsetting Dallas. I don't know if it's an upset.
It's not an upset.
Cooper Rush getting booed a lot over the last couple of days from the loss, but Jalen Hurts didn't put up spectacular numbers. 15 of 25, 155, 2 touchdowns, but he also carried the ball 9 times, 27 yards rushing. He managed the game quite well from watching the game as a management style. It looked like he was able to keep the tempo going. Am I right by thinking that?
Maybe. I watched very little of this game. By the time we got back to our hotel, it was late on in the afternoon games, and we were, checking our phones and posting stuff and doing all that. And obviously the Yankees were playing as well, so I was kind of trying to flip between those on our TV that was from 1973. So it was a mess. But I probably watched a good amount of the second half, and I thought Philadelphia did look like the better team. But we'll talk about before I rush back out of here about our power rankings and stuff. But I'm not giving up on Dallas by any means. Cooper Rush and people booing Cooper Rush, stop it. He's a backup quarterback who did his job better than most backup quarterbacks. He had a bad game. He threw 3 interceptions in that game. A couple of them were bad. I think one was just tipped around and was not his fault. But he did make mistakes, and I think the Eagles kind of had him figured out a little bit. But Dak Prescott's coming back next week. So, yes, Dallas is unable to get that road upset that a lot of us were predicting because at some point the Eagles are going to lose. And that was an easy one to kind of think they might lose. They come out strong. They get the victory. But as we'll talk about in a minute, I'm not giving up on this Dallas team right now.
Yeah. For me, that's the biggest thing is how is Dak going to come back into this offense and what is he going to do, especially coming into Detroit, where do you just let him go and let him slice and dice the Lions? I think that's what happens in this ball game. Let's talk about probably the second best game of the weekend. Let's talk about Buffalo, Kansas City.
You're saying second best because the Jets crushing Green Bay was the best.
I think that was probably the best game I watched of the weekend. And I told you before you left, I said, listen, this game's going to be a lot better than it was, and it turned out.
The sad thing is, you were wrong. It wasn't a good game. The Jets crushed Green Bay. I was hoping for a good game. I didn't get a good game, but it was in the opposite direction. But yes, Buffalo, Kansas City. Again, I didn't really get to watch a lot of this game, but give credit to Buffalo going down, scoring in the last minute again, which really just sets up, all right, here comes Patrick Mahomes. He has even more time now, and he's going to go down the field. But they did a smart move with Von Miller pushing inside the offensive line, which made Mahomes feel like he could roll out and have time, but they had a spy there that really kind of disrupted things, and he threw an interception. So it kind of shows that when you are locked in on, okay, there's this one team, this one hurdle that we cannot get over, how much you look into this team and you start figuring them out. The Bills showed in a way that they have done that. Now, as we've talked about in baseball, the Astros and Yankees series that they had back in July is not going to mean anything for their series that starts tomorrow. The Bills beating the Chiefs on Sunday does not mean that they are guaranteed to win a rematch if they meet again in January. But it's a big win for Buffalo and a big monkey off their back.
And the only thing that does probably guarantee is the playoffs will roll through Buffalo probably this year.
Hey.
I'm just saying it'll be a New York kind of feeling in that
couple weeks. We could be playing for first. By the way, Buffalo only won this game because if the Chiefs would have won, nobody would have been able to stand me on this show. You can't anyways, but the Jets would have been in first place in the AFC East if Buffalo would have lost that game.
It's still going to be interesting where things go with that. We talked about it. I did at the very beginning a little bit of the idea of the running quarterback and what some of these guys are doing and the AFC quarterbacks and how they're stacked. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, is this the next Brady? And these guys.
It could be, for sure.
Putting up the numbers they did, both guys in a great game, 329 yards for Allen, 338 yards for Patrick Mahomes, 3 touchdowns for Allen, 2 touchdowns for Mahomes, a really tough interception in the one spot there for Patrick, but probably I think the second best game of the weekend, just because for you, I'm going to give it to the best.
It was so much fun. Unfortunately, all 3 touchdowns that happened at Lambeau Field on my side of the field ended up on the other side of the end zone. So
nothing came to your side.
Nothing came to my side. That's all right.
Monday night game, we wrap things up here. I think you got to look at the guy that was hurt the entire game. Dustin Hopkins goes 4 for 4 on field goals. Hitting the game-winning one in overtime, which just getting the pass play to get set up for that one. 39-yard field goal. He also hits from 37, 31, and 35. 4 for 4 in field goals. The Chargers knock off the struggling Denver Broncos 19-16.
It was nuts. I actually watched a bit of this game because, again, the Yankees got rained out on Monday, and it was so cold in Wisconsin on Monday. So our plans kind of got hampered. So we used Monday night more of a reset before our long flight. But so I watched a bit of this game, and just seeing Dustin Hopkins on the sideline with that brace on his upper leg, just trying to work things out after he had injured something on an extra point, and just going out there and literally just dropping to a knee after kicking the ball every time, but gutting it up and making a perfect kick every single time. Just hats off. Listen, kickers don't usually get a good rap in this kind of stuff, but Hopkins showed that he is a tough dude to go out there and do that. But that's not the leg injury I think that's going to cause the biggest stir.
No, I don't either. It'll be interesting to see where that ball club goes. I think I think Hopkins might hit the IR for a little bit or just be sidelined for a little bit. I did not see anything late this afternoon of the Chargers making any moves to do stuff, but hats off to Scott and what he could do kicking the ball off for the Chargers to keep them deep and keep Denver having to work through this game.
I was talking about Russell Wilson and his hammy issue. He's not running.
No, he is not running.
And that used to be his big thing in Seattle is roll out and buy all sorts of time. And he seems very hesitant to do so. That, and he's not seeing the easy reads. So there's a certain New York team that is headed to Mile High. And if Russell Wilson is a little gimpy and doesn't want to run and doesn't want to get rid of the ball, there's a couple mean green dudes that I'm going to eat him for lunch.
Listen, I think that defensive front, we'll talk about it here in a minute, but I think that defensive front is going to eat up Russell Wilson this next week. So, hey, let's talk a little bit about our power rankings for this week. I know we kept things up. For me, not a lot of change in the top four. Top three stays the same. For me, I'm going to keep Buffalo and Philadelphia 1, 2, Kansas City also with 3. I don't want to penalize them. They played a great game. But I'm moving Minnesota up. I told you this year. Sorry, Haley. I know you're just now listening to this too. But I took Minnesota for a reason. Minnesota looks like this team is going to keep going as long as they keep things between Thielen and Jefferson plugging the ball, Dalvin Cook keeping running. So I'm putting Minnesota 4th. And, sir, I am putting your 5. I'm putting the Jets at number 5 right now.
I'm not quite there yet. I was really tempted as I was going through it to possibly put the Jets there as well, because I almost put the Giants because they're 5-1 and off to a pretty good start, but they have won some interesting games. I mean, I know you probably talked about their win against Baltimore and the comeback way that they were able to do that. And they have a lot of games like that. So I honestly think the Jets are better than the Giants. But I still didn't want to put the Jets quite top 5. I had Kansas City at 1. Obviously, I will knock them a little bit for losing to Buffalo. So I'll go with you. I'll put Buffalo 1, Philadelphia 2, Kansas City 3. All 3 of those teams have been off to a great start. Philadelphia is really starting to win me over as far as being a Super Bowl contender, especially in that NFC where there's not a lot of top tier teams right now. I have Minnesota at 4, but it's kind of a reluctant to. Again, it's the top 3 have such a gap right now to me. It's like the top 4 that we had in baseball for so long. The top 3 is a big gap, and then there's 8 or 9 teams that you can just rotate around for about the rest of the top 10, maybe a little bit more. Minnesota right now is the one that's winning. They beat up on Miami and their quarterback problems that they have going on. So I'll give them the nod at 4. And I'm going to do the same thing you did with Kansas City. I'm not going to knock Dallas that much for losing on the road to an undefeated division rival with their backup quarterback, who threw 3 interceptions.
Mhm.
They stayed in the game. I still think they're a very good team. I think that they are running the ball more with Pollard and Zeke, and that's really helping that offense. So I do think even with the loss on Sunday night, Dallas is a top 5 team.
And we'll talk about that here in just a minute. But really quick score update as we have just finished 6 in San Diego. Philadelphia leads 2-0. Bryce Harper hit the first one in the 4th inning off of Hugh Darvish, and then followed up in the 6th inning. Kyle Schwarber hits a home run also off of Hugh Darvish. So the Phillies now leading this one 2-0.
Don't give it up.
Yeah, listen. Let's talk a little news before we
Let's skip the news. Let's get to the games real quick because I gotta get back out of here. But
all right, so let's talk about key games really quick. A few of them pop up in my mind. For me, is this probably going to be one of those weekends that is kind of lacking, as 3 of the best teams are on a bye week with Buffalo, Minnesota, and Philadelphia.
Yeah, and the Rams aren't horrible.
They're not horrible, but they're all on
fantasy managers are probably scrambling for these teams. But no, I mean, there's going to be a lot of intrigue in some of these matches. To me, the big one that stands out is we all kind of poo-pooed the AFC South, especially with the way that the Colts and Titans, who were supposed to be the leaders of this division, and the way they played the first few weeks. I think both of them have really turned things around. Tennessee coming off the bye, now playing at home. You know, they're starting to get back to Tennessee football. Matt Ryan looked fantastic from the highlights that I saw from their win on Sunday. Poo-pooed, yes. So that one's really interesting to me because that one just feels like the division is up for grabs, especially because I don't know if you've noticed this, and I only noticed it because we do the bowling league and I put the standings together. This is the 5th division game for Indianapolis already.
Yeah.
They will not play another division game till week 18.
Mm-hmm.
We got front loaded with it. So it's very important to finish this stretch of division games with the win against Tennessee.
So I put in here a few games that I thought were interesting just because of where they're at ranked wise, standing wise, 3-3. You look at the 3-3 Atlanta Falcons, who is tied with Tampa Bay, and also the 3-3 Cincinnati Bengals, also tied for first place. I think this could be an interesting matchup. After watching Joe Burrow and the way he played this last week, taking on Marcus Mariota, do you think this is? I think this is an intriguing matchup. It could be big for both ball clubs.
No, I think Atlanta comes back to earth. Cincinnati is starting to get things rolling. They were another team that struggled to begin with. I think Cincinnati's the far better team, and Atlanta will be one of those teams that we completely forgot that they were tied for the division lead after 6 weeks.
You did talk about Indianapolis, Tennessee, so we'll just move on to the next one that I had. How does Aaron Rodgers bounce back, especially against the Washington Commanders, and the feel-good story of what's happening with Brian Robinson?
That'll be really interesting, especially with Carson Wentz going down, and he's going to be out for a few weeks. We'll see with Green Bay. I'm worried with the Packers just for Aaron Rodgers coming out and saying they need to simplify the offense, which is just him, again, kind of getting down on his young receivers. But again, that offense did not look good. I don't blame the wide receivers really for the way that game went. It was just the defensive line of the Jets made the offensive line look horrible. So Rodgers really had no time. The running game had no space. So it's not as much simplifying the offense as they just got to find different ways to get it to their playmakers faster. And we will see what they can do. I don't think Washington should put up too much of a challenge, but I think a lot of people said that about the Giants and the Jets as well. So we will see.
You do say the Jets. I think that's another intriguing matchup. How does the Jets travel to Mile High? That defensive front of 4 looks unbelievable in stopping what they can do. I think it's enough to disrupt Russell Wilson a little bit more and them come away with another big win in the Mile High.
Oh yeah, on paper it looks like the Jets should win. It's interesting that Denver is still the favorite as far as Vegas goes. I think it's just the normal home team 3 points or whatever. Um, but what do the Jets do? This is one of their biggest wins ever, or at least in the last several years, against Aaron Rodgers, who has not lost at Lambeau Field in 16 games, and they completely decimate him. But with a young team, do you have that off week afterwards? Do you have the hangover game? I'm going to be curious about that. Also, if Denver can get up, the Jets have not shown me that they cannot make a comeback until that fourth quarter. They've had some good fourth quarter comebacks, but what do you do if you punch them in the mouth early? Do they start scrambling in the second and third quarters? It's worked out well for them the last couple of weeks, but I'm not. I'm most likely going to pick the Jets when we get our pick comes out on Thursday, but it would not surprise me if the Jets had kind of a letdown game, and I wouldn't be upset about it either, because every team's going to do this.
We'll talk about two other games that I had written down. Cleveland, do they get Deshaun Watson back? Baltimore has to have a bounce back week after now 3 losses by double digits, having double digit leads.
Mm-hmm.
Baltimore, I talked about Baltimore's secondary and their prevent defense. They like to run in the fourth. Might be interesting, especially with a division matchup.
Well, Cleveland's not getting Deshaun Watson for a few more weeks, if at all. But yeah, I agree with you that Baltimore has to figure out a way to shut teams out. I mean, like you said, you look at the scores at halftime, and it's like, all right, Baltimore's going to win. Because the one thing with Lambeau is they don't have a lot of the reader boards, so they don't have scores constantly. So it'd be every so often you'd kind of see scores pop up, and Baltimore's winning. Okay, that's not surprising. Next thing you know, Baltimore lost. How did that happen?
Yeah. Another hurtful game with that one. And for me, I think probably the game of the weekend and overall with this, give me the Kansas City at San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick Mahomes had a great game. This is one of the afternoon games, probably the afternoon game of the weekend. Kansas City traveling into it's not Levi Stadium anymore. San Francisco. I think it's going to be a great matchup. Lots of points, I think, in this one.
Yeah, it should be fun. Yeah, the afternoon slate looks better than the morning slate, which is rare. So, yeah, I agree. It could be a good game.
So, with that being said, let's take a look at our Thursday night matchup, as we didn't talk about it. It is the New Orleans Saints at the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona making lots of moves over the last couple of days with Hollywood Brown going out with an ankle injury. They do sign the Mr. Disgruntled wide receiver, Robbie Anderson from Carolina, after the altercation. And that, sir, I know who you're going with because it's in the same pattern, but tell us, who are you taking? You taking the home team?
This one was tougher to do the home team on Thursday night, which, by the way, has not worked the last couple of weeks. I'm still devastated how Chicago lost that game on Thursday night, where I thought I was going to get that win and it didn't work out, which happened a lot over the weekend. But I'm not fully sold on the Saints yet. Obviously, Robbie Anderson, I don't expect to see much of on Thursday, but they do get the other wide receiver, Hopkins. They get Hopkins back. So Hopkins, I think, is going to play a key role. Would it be nice to see him and Robbie Anderson on each side of the field? Absolutely. But I think he's enough. I'll take the Cardinals in a low-scoring game, and I think that's how Arizona's going to have to win it.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take Arizona, the same thing. And I would be very shocked if Andy Dalton doesn't come out and start throwing quite quickly and quite often in this ball game and try to put the pressure on the Cardinals. So I'm also going to take that, but I think it's going to be a close game with this one there. So, sir, we did our eliminators, and in week 6, you are eliminating who from the playoffs?
The team that screwed up my Thursday night pick, Chicago Bears. They don't look like a very good offense. at all. Justin Fields, like for all the people that were yelling at the Jets for not taking Justin Fields, he's not shown me anything. Now, yes, it could be the system that he's in with Chicago, but just nothing is working there. That the NFC South, they easily look like the worst team, especially with Detroit showing signs of being a better team. I don't think Detroit's ready for that next step either yet. But Chicago, by far and away, is the worst team in that division.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. I'm going to go with an NFC North team. I'm going to take the Detroit Lions to finally put in the spot because I think Dallas goes in there. Dak goes in there with something to prove after losing this game. I think they just obliterate Detroit. That would then put Detroit, I think, at just the one win on the season. So,
Wait, you think they had such a bad bye week that you're just going to eliminate them now? Jeez.
yeah, I might as
Rude.
well just take them out now. So,
All right.
again, you're listening to the R&R Sports Report live just tonight on Facebook and YouTube. So make sure you are checking in with that. I didn't put it in the notes, but I'm not doing this to rub it in or anything. As we do our pick'ems every Thursday, we turn them in. I myself took all and got all four of the different picks right. So now I have a 4-game lead. I have my record of 53, 40, and 1. Randy's is still respectable, 49, 44, and 1.
Wow.
The 4 and 10 records hurts a little bit.
4 and 10 hurt, especially because I didn't want to jinx the Jets, so I didn't pick them, and they shocked me. Yeah, I lost so many games. I not as bad as Ray in our bowling league, who went 1 and 13. And the only win he got was Indianapolis coming back to beat Jacksonville. So he almost didn't win that one either. So
I don't think we've ever had a 0 and 14.
No, we have not had a 0. We give out plaques for perfect weeks. We need to come up with a plaque just in case for the over weeks. It'd be pretty fun.
We'll get him one of these little tiny ones like this.
It needs to be a circle.
Yeah, there you go.
Just a big O. But no, you have made a good comeback as far as the football picks because I jumped out ahead of you in the NFL. I still got you in the other ones, and you'll go through my picks when I get out of here. But shout out though to Miss Haley Moses, who leads our bowling league now in the overall pick. She's been crushing it and crushing me. I think she has me by 8 games right now, so she's been doing great.
I did see that I moved up a little bit. I think I'm tied for 4th, but I'm only like 5 games out from where she's at.
It's a tight race.
Yes,
it's so tight. Like literally. So what? You're 4 games ahead. You're 4 games ahead of me, right?
I think so.
And so you're either tied for 3rd or tied for 4th. I'm in 18th, and we're 4 picks different. So
yeah, it's anybody's ball game. But be watching for those Thursday morning. We will put those out on the R&R Facebook page with ours. I know Robert Taylor, our buddy, has been putting picks on, and so filling those out. So maybe I'll put a blank copy on there and where you guys can look at it and you can fill it out. So
come make your picks with us. That'd be great. But I'm gonna run. I'm gonna hang out with the family and then try to get some sleep because we had to get up at 1 a.m. Pacific time to catch our flight. So I'm loopy and yes. So I will see you guys on Tuesday back at the station. Robert, I'll see you before that for sure.
All right. I got your recaps, but I know you've already got them done, so I'll just get them to you. So,
all right, man. Appreciate it.
All right, but hey, that's Randy Isbell, the other half of the R&R Sports Report, jumping on as he was flying back from the great state of Wisconsin where he watched the game. We'll get a little bit more in depth with that trip. I want to hear about his trip a little bit, and hopefully we'll get to do that next week. Let's get into some NFL news that we did not cover. We did talk a little bit about the Robbie Anderson trade. He got traded right after his big skirmish with his wide receiver coach, Sean Jefferson, there, who had reading into it, have had tests before. So finally, the interim coach, Mr. Sean Wilkes, sent Robbie Anderson to the locker room, and he was sent packing the next day as he was traded to Arizona yesterday. Huge injury with Hollywood Brown. Hopefully gets back but he was getting a second opinion, so he may be back next season or sometime this season, but it looks like it might be a season-ending injury for Marquise Hollywood Brown. Also, what about the QB carousel in Miami? What is happening with everything going down there between Thompson getting hurt this one? He got the start this week and gets hurt. Then Teddy Bridgewater comes in, has a decent game, 300 yards over. This week, Tua is looking at getting the start. He's going to be preparing for the Sunday night game against Pittsburgh. Didn't talk about that game a little bit ago. Could be quite interesting in that one. Pittsburgh, bottom of the AFC North, is traveling to Miami to take on the Dolphins. It might be an interesting game on Sunday. We'll see how things plan out with that. But that would be great. You see Kenny Pickett's taking on Tua. Could be a matchup there. Green Bay, they do lose Randall Cobb. He's probably going to be out several weeks, anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks with a high ankle sprain. We'll be watching that quite closely. Randy did bring it up. Washington Commanders' Carson Wentz has surgery yesterday on a broken finger. The Commanders are still not saying exactly how many weeks they are going to keep him out. They are saying right now at least 4 weeks. Taylor Heinicke is going to get the start against Green Bay. Look for that to be interesting. I said it just a few minutes ago. Look for that game to be very interesting just because Green Bay struggled with the Jets at home. Taylor comes in. We've seen what Taylor can do. That it's going to be a great game. Does Green Bay bounce back? I think it's going to be a good one. Los Angeles Rams. Where do we start with this ball club? What are they doing? Cam Akers now on the bench again. With this one, he is quoted. Sean McVay, head coach, is quoted as saying, "We're exploring options for finding Cam Akers a fresh new start." A fresh new start. They're saying, okay, well, I guess we're done. We're moving on from him. That's it. No more. So it makes things quite interesting as we get into, we are less right at 10 days, I believe. 10 days from the trade deadline. What other names are on the move? We've already seen Robbie Anderson move because of the tirade. We see Cam Akers now going to be benched until he moves. Who else could be on the move? I want to say the name. We all know the name that's been thrown out there so many times. And it's that team that has struggled with things going on there. And that's Carolina. It's Carolina. Is it time for them to unload everybody and rebuild? It'll be quite interesting. Baker Mayfield hasn't been the answer there. Sam Darnold gets put on the bench and then it hits the IR. Christian McCaffrey. Where does Christian McCaffrey go? I can tell you 2 spots I think he fit in quite well. Best place? Send him back to where his dad was from and where his dad made his career. Send him to Denver. Christian McCaffrey could be a great place for him to go to Denver. Help Russell Wilson set up that run game a little bit better. I think that's the best place for him right now. I think that is the number 1 place for him to be at. The other place, just to get him out of there and to figure something out, maybe Chicago. Montgomery's not the answer. He hasn't been able to do anything. Justin Fields was their leading rusher last week. Those are the 2 big spots. I think Christian McCaffrey is on the move. I think he gets traded by the 1st of next week. But look for him to land in Denver. I think that's the spot. That's the big spot. Now, with that being said, do you flip-flop? Do you flip-flop with LA? Could Christian McCaffrey be a good fit in a trade for Cam Akers? Cam Akers goes to Carolina. Is that a good fresh start for him there? Can Christian McCaffrey fit into a team, a location, a big city to freshen up his career? I don't know. Could be. Those two places, those three places. Let me know. Drop us a line. Let us know. Where do you think Christian McCaffrey goes? Do you think Christian McCaffrey moves? Who else do you think might be on the move? We got 2 weeks, 10 days. We might have a few more answers next week. It'll be a little bit closer. So we'll be watching that here quite closely this week. Another score update. Top of the 8th inning as Segura is getting ready to is at bat. Phillies still lead this one 2-0. So let's move on to some high school scores. We're just going to go through them really quick. I talked a little bit really fast about that. We got lots of things. I want to hit some college football. I want to say some stuff about some college football that we saw happen last week. And sorry, guys, I'm going to bash a little bit on Nick Saban. I'm going to bash on a little bit on it. So let's take some high school football scores. Lewis come back to defeat Lake City 42-31. Great game. Jackson Lathan, who had a monster game dealing with that leg injury a little bit. Didn't look like it. 14 carries, 190 yards, 2 touchdowns. Talking with Brian Danner the other day, unbelievable game. Watching him play, it just looked unbelievable. It was a must win for the Lewis and Bengals, so it'll be interesting as we talk about our picks here in a few minutes with that. Clarkson goes up to Pullman and handles Pullman quite well. Kaika Milan, 26 carries, 151 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was the heartbeat behind this team last week. I mean, great to have Ian Moore back. He was able to get some pressure. Great defensive front. The only thing bad about not seeing in that game, Sage Lombert was not active, was not playing in this ball game. Sage has got to get back out on the field, especially going up against Shadle Park. We'll talk about that here in a few minutes, but it's going to be a big game this weekend. Listen, I feel bad for Moscow. What does Moscow have to do to try to win a game? It's going to be interesting. Sandpoint rolls Moscow 67-0. It just was not a game. Also, Pomeroy comes away with a big win against Garfield Palouse and roll Garfield Palouse 72-0. 72-0. Pomeroy does not pass the ball one time at all Friday night. 0 passes, 452 yards rushing, and win that ball game 72-0. Pomeroy looks pretty darn good. Other scorers, Cami defeats Genesee 66-22. Kellogg, again, we've talked about Kellogg a few times. They roll right over Grangeville 50-12 in that one. Davenport, who is a tough team to play, knocks off Colfax 49-24. Lapwai comes away with a big win, 44-32. Clearwater Valley defeats Prairie on a last-second plays, 34-30. Lewis County rolls Lakeside 44-8. And another game we didn't pick in our picks last week, and I think Randy did it for a reason. And here's that reason. Kendrick just beats up on Tico Rosalia 40-0. This is the second consecutive week where the game is called, this time with 8 minutes still in the second quarter. Kendrick jumped out to a 40-0 lead. Tico Rosalia started the game with just 12 kids, and then they went down to 8 kids after a couple of injuries. Sad to see what happens in Tico with what's going on with their team, but Kendrick, this is 2 weeks in a row. There are just rolling players. They are just rolling the teams they're playing. And to have 2 games back to back that are called before they even get past halftime. Hobart's got a good team there in Kendrick. Keep watching what Zane's doing with that team. It's Saturday with a game that I'm shocked at, and I know Randy was just as much. Troy edges out Logos 46-40. So big things happening there. High school football. We'll talk about our picks here in just a minute, but I want to talk a little bit about college football. There were some big games this weekend. I've said it all year long. I kept saying it. Georgia is the best team in NCAA football this season, hands down, period, dot. They have dominated their games that they've been playing. They come out, shut out Vandy 55-0, 579 yards of total offense. 579. They held on to the ball 2/3 of the time. They had the ball 39 minutes out of those 60 minutes. Look for Georgia to be a lot better than where they're at. How about the biggest upset? We got to talk about it. I kicked myself. I went back and forth. I wanted to do it. I believed in Bama. But listen, Tennessee is playing quite well. Tennessee goes in and just beats up on Alabama 52-49. They win this one, and as the time expires, Chase McGrath 40-yard field goal as seconds to go off. Bama trailed by 8 at the halftime, 28-20. And then this game win for Tennessee. This is the first time in 15 games against Alabama that they finally have won one. They snapped a 15-game lose streak. Hats off to the Vols. What about the sight of seeing you got a stadium that holds 100,000 people at Tennessee Volunteer Stadium? And to see that student section, see those folks rushing the field, seeing the fireworks going off. They beat Alabama. One of the best teams. Not hands off to Nick Saban, but you've got to do something with your defense to slow this Tennessee team down. And I didn't see the adjustments. There was no adjustments in this team at all. Who would have figured that the Tennessee Volunteers and the Alabama Crimson Tide would throw up 101 points total? Now, I don't know what the over-under was. I didn't look at the over-under of this game. But there was no way it would have been close to 100. I don't even think it would have been anywhere close to 60. But Nick Saban, you got to get your defensive guy to slow down what was happening with the Vols. Hands down. We'll talk about how far they dropped them down here in the rankings in just a minute. But Alabama falls down the rankings. Do they fall far enough? That's my question. Did Alabama fall down far enough in the rankings? I don't think they did. They didn't fall down the rankings far enough to what I think they should have been. Michigan handles Penn State. Not much of a game there. They end up number 5. Michigan State beats number 10 Penn State. Michigan, Penn State 41-17. Utah comes away with a big win against USC 43-42. Do we call that an upset? Do we call it? It was very close. But we've known Utah is a decent playing team all year long. TCU, I think probably the bigger upset, knocks off Oklahoma State, number 8, Oklahoma State, 43-40. Syracuse beats NC State, 24-9. Kentucky beats Mississippi State, 27-17. How about Oklahoma? Oklahoma's good. Oklahoma beats up on Kansas 52-42. How about a MAC team? Georgia Southern defeats James Madison. James Madison finally getting ranked at 25th. It'll be interesting. All right, how about this one? I think the biggest one that happened in the Northwest. How about Idaho? IDAHO, Idaho. Go, go, go. How about those Vandals? Vandals get the Little Brown Stein back. They knock off Montana 30-23 in a game that might be the best one. I think the best player out there, Idaho receiver Hayden Hatton, made some big plays. 9 catches, 149 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also had an onside kick recovery with 31 seconds to help seal the win against Montana. Hayden Hatton has to be probably the player of the Big Sky Conference this week. It'll be interesting to see. Montana comes away with a loss. It'll be interesting. Oregon State knocks off the Cougars 24-10. Not much of a game in this one. OSU rushes the ball for 203 yards. Washington State just 23 yards rushing. I know it's a run and throw league or with this offense in Pullman, but you've got to set up some kind of running game. Watson's got to have some kind of running game. Jalen Jenkins ran the ball, had 42 yards, but the Cougars just net 23. That includes the sacks for Cameron Ward. So Cameron Ward had another big game throwing the ball, 25-34, 345, a touchdown, interception. You have to play. You have to run the ball. We talked about that. We talked about it earlier. Got to run the ball. New rankings right now. You look, Georgia stays at number 1. Ohio State also at number 1. Tennessee climbs 3 spots, moves up to the 3rd spot. Michigan at 4. Clemson at 5. Bama drops down to just 6. A little shocked with that. Clemson is at 5. Alabama at 6. Just 6-1 there. There's a couple other 6-0 teams, 7-0 teams that I think could have been higher than Alabama. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. Ole Miss, one of those teams. TCU, one of those teams. UCLA, one of those teams. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. New into the rankings, North Carolina drops in at 22. Tulane in at number 25. A couple of big games coming up this weekend in the Pac-12. The ESPN College Game Day. Number 9, UCLA is going to take on number 10, Oregon. I think it will be the game of the weekend. I think it's going to be hands down. You see a team that is 6-0 against a 5-1 team. It will be an interesting game in Eugene. Number 14, Syracuse takes on number 5, Clemson. Number 7, Ole Miss takes on LSU. Mississippi State is at Alabama. Could be an interesting game there. And in the Big Sky, Portland State comes to the Kibbie Dome in Moscow to take on the Idaho Vandals. A little refresher there. Let's take a look at some LCSC sports before we get into some other things. Volleyball had a little bit of a rough weekend as LCA was swept. They lost to the College of Idaho in 4 tight sets. Jada Wims has 13 kills and 4 blocks. Ashley Bachman has 3 aces, and Cassidy Nelson had 6 serving errors in that game against the College of Idaho down in Caldwell. And then they get swept in LeGrand there at Eastern Oregon and lose to number 1 Eastern Oregon in 3 straight sets, 25-23, 25-17, and 25-16. Cassidy Nelson does have 10 kills. Lisi Lange also had 4 blocks and only 6 team service errors for that ball club. good to see that happen, but we've got to come away with some wins coming in this one. This week for the volleyball girls, they are also on the road again after we had Coach Sean Pullman talk about it last week. They're going to be taking on a couple more tough teams. Friday night, they've got Northwest. And then on Saturday, they take on the Gooey Ducks over out of Olympia. They take on Evergreen State. Both teams has beat LC at home earlier this season, so it will be an interesting weekend of volleyball. Right now, currently the standings in the regular season: number 1 Corbin at 15-1. Eastern Oregon is now number 2 at 15-1. Southern Oregon 10-5. Bushnell 10-6. Evergreen 10-6. LC sitting at 9-7. Oregon Tech 8-7. And Northwest 8-8. So still in the hunt for the playoffs in that one. In men's golf, they do have a match this week. The NCAA Division III Whitworth today. No scores have been posted yet, so we'll keep an eye on that. We'll let you know where that is. Men's basketball, their season open exhibition versus the Seattle Mountaineers is on Friday. Tip is at 5:30 at the P1 FCU Activity Center. So if you're looking for plans, make sure you do that and attend that game. Got to watch the Mountaineers last year. They played quite well. LC won the meeting last season, 97-76. So make sure you do that. We turn our attention to women's basketball there at LC, and the LC women are favored to defend the CCC regular season champs. They finished last season 19-3. Those 3 losses, are very shady to look at. Only one of those losses come from on the floor. The other 2 losses are COVID losses that they had to forfeit and not be able to play. So tough to see that record. But they are the defending champions from the CCC regular season. So look for them to be a team to be reckoned with as they end up getting 6 first place votes. Right now, they are currently ranked number 1 in the CCC. Another quick score update. We are at the top of the 9th with 2 out, and the Philadelphia still leads 2-0. And it does look like it will be the bottom of the order coming up for the San Diego Padres here. 2 outs currently. Bryce Harper at bat. Bryce Harper 1-3 so far. And we'll keep an eye on that one here coming up. Let's look a little bit about Major League Baseball right now. San Diego won 3 straight to beat the heavily favored LA Dodgers. So it was close to see. It was all close games in this one. A little shocked to see that the Dodgers out of it. Also in the same breath, we talk about the Philadelphia Phillies knock off the Atlanta Braves. 2 of the teams that we thought were going to be in there getting beat by both San Diego. We figured they were up and down all season. It was going to be one of those tough matchups for that team. It is going to be quite interesting. Again, Philadelphia and them will also play tomorrow. They will have the early game in game number 2 in San Diego. Game number 5, as we talked about a little while ago, New York Yankees knock off the Cleveland Guardians 5-1, and they are going to be facing the Houston Astros in Houston tomorrow. They'll take on game number 1, and that one at 4:30 Pacific time tomorrow in Houston. Don't want to dive on the Mariners, but tough series for them as they go in straight games against the Astros. Also, other news here, the 2022 Hank Aaron Award finalists were named this a couple of days ago. That this award is given out to the best outstanding regular season offensive player for both the American League and the National League. Your finalist for the American League, you've got Jose Altuve of the Astros, Jordan Alvarez, also the Astro, Rafael Devers, Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani, Jose Ramirez, Julio Rodriguez, and Mike Trout for the American League. For me, you got to go with Aaron Judge winning this one. I think that's the big thing. It's this one in the American League. For the National League, you're looking at Pete Alonso, Nolan Ariano, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Paul Goldschmidt, Manny Machado, Austin Riley, and Kyle Schwarber. I think this is another almost no-brainer in this one. Who is going to win for the national side? Give me Paul Goldschmidt. I think he is going to have an unbelievable season for St. Louis and what he's done there. So for me, the Hank Aaron Award winners are going to end up being Aaron Judge and Paul Goldschmidt. We'll see how that pairs out here in the next few weeks when they make the decision and votes on that. Also, another news in the MLB, we talked about him a little bit. He's not there with the Padres now. Fernando Tatis has his second surgery to help correct that wrist. He is still serving his 80-game suspension, so it will be interesting to see what happens there. Let's turn our attention to the pick'ems. Like Randy said a little bit ago, I have kind of slumped off on the college pick'ems and high school pick'ems. Last week I do a little bit better. I go 12-4. Randy goes 11-5. High school looks really good. I went 9-1 in the high school ranks. 3-3 college. Randy also 3-3 college, also and 8-2 in the high school ranks. As I had gotten the Clarkson Pullman game different than he did. Both of us missed the Logos game, which was a little disheartening on that one. So let's look at our game matchups this week for our picks. Coeur d'Alene is on the road at Lewiston, being played here at Bengal Field. Both of us are going to take Lewiston in this matchup. It's one of those ones that has to keep going. It's going to be a win, or you might not make the playoffs, especially how strong that conference is up there in the 5A in the Idaho side. Potlatch is at Kamiah. Both of us are going to take Kamiah. Timberline at Lewis County. We think the home county, Lewis County, is going to come away with a win there. Lakeland is visiting Moscow. I just don't think Moscow is going to have anything to really get them a chance to win in this one. Lakeland has been still one of the lower teams in that division. I think they come in and take care of business against Moscow. Logos and Prairie, both of us are going to take Logos to come back and win this one. Logos suffering that big loss this last week at the hands of Troy, especially on that Saturday game. So we're going to both giving Logos the pass there. We look at Orofino, St. Mary's. Orofino has struggled all year long. They have not had an answer for anything. Give us both St. Mary's. We have Clearwater Valley taking on Troy, and both of us are going to take Clearwater Valley on the road in that one. Asotin will be traveling up to Colfax on Saturday. It'll be one of those games. I think Colfax, being the 2B team, they're going to come away with a big win there. Randy also agrees with me there. Genesee has just proven not to be the team this year. Genesee will travel out to Lapwai on Friday. Give us both Lapwai in that game, as so far all of us have picked the same team, and we are going to all be the same in this high school as we get to the other high school game. Clarkson will be traveling up to Shadle Park on Saturday. The game is going to be up at University High School, and I will have the call on that game. You can listen to that live on 92.1, the Hank FM, and both of us are going to take that one. Clarkson beating Shadle Park. That one will play out for the number 2 spot in the GSL. We turn our attention to the college ranks. We look at we're going to take one of the Big Sky games, Portland State at Idaho. Both of us like Idaho, with Portland State coming in this one. Big emotional win for the Vandals here this past week as they bring home the Stein against Montana. So we think the momentum keeps going. So give us Idaho. And like I said, the game of the weekend, the ESPN game day coverage. Number 9 UCLA taking on number 10 Oregon. Right now, Oregon is favored 5.5. So both of us taking Oregon in this matchup. Number 7 Ole Miss travels down to the Bayou at Baton Rouge to take on the LSU Tigers. Right now, LSU is favored by 1.5. So give us both LSU in this ball game. We look at the next game, number 20. Texas is on the road at number 11, Oklahoma State. Texas favored by 6 points. Both of us are going to take the Longhorns in this matchup. Then you got Troy at South Alabama. Right now, this is the Thursday night game. South Alabama is favored by 3. Got to have at least one different. Randy is taking South Alabama. He's taking the home team. I am going to take the Troy Ball Club. So that one is on Thursday, ESPN. You can check that one out there. And in the Friday night game, UAB at Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky favored by 2.5 points. Both of us taking Western. So only one game different in this one. Out of all of our picks this week, I have Troy. He is taking South Alabama. Let's turn our attention to a few other things, some sports happening in the world of NASCAR, as they were in South Point at the South Point 400 in Las Vegas. Joey Logano outduels Ross Chastain. Logano is locked in for one of the final 4 spots. That's good for his team. I think more of the thing is what happened between Bubba Wallace and Kyle Larson and having the incident. You could watch them cut it down. Bubba Wallace gets put up into the wall. Lots of shoving and pushing back and forth. Don't know what these two guys are thinking, but they will probably come away with some fines, maybe suspension. It'll be interesting. If you haven't watched the highlight of the skirmish between the two as they're racing there in Vegas, you watch Bubba Wallace come out and start shoving him a few times, and it was quite interesting to see. So right now in your standings, you've got Joey Logano. He does have one win right now. Number 1, number 2, you got Ross Chastain, Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, William Byron, Chase Briscoe, Ryan Blaney, and Christopher Bell. Just 23 points back. Next race is going to be at Homestead. It is the Dixie Vodka 400. So make sure that you are watching this as the playoff season is winding down. Another quick update, score-wise. If 1 out in the bottom of the 9th, the Philadelphia Phillies still lead this one 2-0 over the Padres, as Manny Machado is up. Machado now 0 for 3 on the day. After Machado, we've got Josh Bell will be up right after him. So as we are watching what is happening in this one, let's turn our attention here to PGA Golf, as the PGA have went across the river, went over and went to Japan and played in the Zozo Championship at the Accordia Golf Country Club. Keegan Bradley ends up shooting 15 under to win, and holds off both Ricky Fowler and Andrew Putnam. And they both finished at second, tied at 14 under. Keegan's first PGA Tour win in 4 years. It has been a struggle for that man to get out there and be playing. His last win was the 2018 BMW Championship, and so it was good to see him come away with his 5th PGA Tour win. He bogeyed 2 of the last 5 holes, but he ended up hitting a great birdie on 18 to make sure that he stayed ahead of playing partners Fowler and Putnam. Clarkson native Joel Damon finishes the tournament at 18 under, or excuse me, tied for 18th at 8 under. Nice little payday of $150,000 in that one. So the tour is back in America this next week as they travel to the CJ Cup in South Carolina at the Congaree Golf Course. They'll tee things off on Thursday, October 20th, with the defending champion Rory McIlroy. As we take a look here, back to the score, bottom of the ninth, 2 out now, and it is Mr. Bell up at the dish. Bell also 0 for 3 with a strikeout today. He's lined out, struck out swinging, lined out to center, and lined out to second. There are 2 runners on. So it'll be interesting to see if Philly can hold on to this one. Well, since it's just me tonight and we have covered just about everything that I had in the notes, make sure that you are watching on Thursday, as Randy and I will have our picks out on the R&R Sports Report Facebook page on Thursday morning. A couple of big matchups in the NFL this week, and none bigger than the Kansas City at San Francisco. That game is slated for an afternoon game. The afternoon games look so much more inviting than the morning games, but week 7 will be quite interesting, especially with Buffalo, Minnesota, and Philadelphia on a bye week. Also have LA Rams on a bye week. It'll be interesting to see where these teams go in this. Again, myself, I am leading Randy right now in the picks at 53-40-1, Randy at 49-44-1. Some, again, big college matchups. Make sure that you are watching those. None bigger than the UCLA Oregon matchup. That will be a great weekend of football, as that game will be taking place at 12:30. It is the Fox game of the week. Also, as I said, college game day there. We look at the other matchups in the Pac-10, Pac-12. Arizona State on the road at Stanford, 1 o'clock on the Pac-12 network. Colorado at Oregon State. That is also on the Pac-12 network, 5 p.m. And your late game this evening or this weekend for the Pac-12, Washington on the road at Cal. That should be a great matchup. 7:30 kickoff on that game. And it is final in Philadelphia. And the Philadelphia Phillies hold on and take game number 1 over the San Diego Padres 2-0. And with that, like I said, we have hit on just about everything in this one. I want to thank Randy for coming on, even after having all of his jet lag and such, to talk a little NFL. We'll talk more about his trip next week and that. Make sure you go out watching the high school sports things going on. The Lewiston Bengals at home against Sandpoint. That game, 7 o'clock on Saturday, or excuse me, Friday. Clarkson travels to Shadle Park up to University High School to take on the Highlanders of Shadle Park. That one is a kickoff at 1 o'clock on Saturday. Yours truly will be calling that game live on the Hank 92.1 FM. You can listen live to that game. that's going to do it for this week's R&R Sports Report. We'll be back again next Tuesday, as I will be done with junior high football, so we can focus a little bit more, not be so rushed. But we've had a great time. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you back here next week for another episode of the R&R Sports Report.